Right, good afternoon everybody, and thank you for your patience and for assembling here today. So I'm BJ Harrington, Chief Constable of Essex, and I'm here to talk to you about events that have recently happened at the Bell Hotel in Epping. Before I do that, I just want to set out some clear issues here. Who's important to Essex Police? The communities of Epping, the communities of Essex, and the right for everybody there to go about their business lawfully and peacefully, whether that's to express a view about something we agree with or disagree with. But what it's not about is allowing people to commit crime, to commit violence, or to disrupt those communities. So that's at the heart of the Essex Police operation. Importantly, we police according to the law, as it is, not as people would want it to be. So it is clear and factual that people in this country, and it's an important element in our democratic rights, that people can assemble peacefully and lawfully to express their views, whether we agree with them or not. And that's an important point and one of the objectives for Essex Police in this matter. I want to thank the people of Epping. I want to thank the people of Essex. I also want to thank all those who have turned up to protest and express their views peacefully and lawfully, because there have been many of those. I've seen the pictures, I've read the commentaries in the newspapers that have been made to many of you about people who feel firmly about an issue that concerns them and have expressed that well, peacefully, to make their views properly known. What has been unacceptable has been the people who have come to Epping and committed violence, who have attacked people who work at the hotel, who have attacked officers, who have damaged property, and who have caused fear and disruption to the people of Epping. That is not tolerable. It will not be tolerated, and to that end we have made 10 arrests. A number of those people have been charged. A number of those people have been remanded in custody for serious offences. And my thanks go to the Crown Prosecution Service, who have assisted us in bringing those prosecutions. I also want to be clear that where people commit other crimes, and you will have noted that this issue started with a crime committed by a resident at the Bell Hotel, and where people in these residences commit crimes, we'll deal with that as well. And in that particular case, I want to stress and remind people that within 2 hours police responded. We arrested, we have charged, and we have remanded an individual for that alleged assault on a schoolgirl, and they remain awaiting trial. So we are being absolutely impartial, policing according to the law and making sure we enforce the law and try to protect communities. That is the approach that Essex Police will take. It's the approach Essex Police continues to take and will continue to take as further demonstrations, which we know are being advertised and discussed in the media for the coming week. I also want to be really clear. It is not for Essex Police to make a judgment about asylum or immigration policy. That is for government. It is for Essex Police and the police more generally to make sure that people can go about their rights and their business lawfully. Whether that's to be part of a community, the businesses of Epping, for example, the people of Essex, the school nearby, or indeed the people who are residents in that centre. It is not for me or my officers to try and make up policy or to be partial in the back of a police van. It is for us to enforce the law, to act within the law, and I think our actions and the bravery and the commitment of the officers, some of which have been injured, has shown that, and we will continue to do that. I also want to thank our partners, whether that's Epping Forest District Council and the many other partners from emergency services, the CPS and others, because whether it has been this asylum hotel or other asylum accommodation across Essex, and indeed I know this is the same for officers and forces across the country, we continue to work with the authorities, the Home Office and local partners to make sure that people can live their lives safely, that people are not harmed. That is our priority decision, to make sure that people do not get hurt and the crimes where they're committed are dealt with and they're prevented. So we continue to do that, and we'll continue to do that, working with all the different communities, whoever they are. I also want to pick up an issue about information, and thank you. You are the responsible press. You've come here together to hear the facts from Essex Police about the policing operation. Okay, I would encourage people who are on social media or in the media to comment responsibly. And that's not me seeking to limit people's views, but to ensure that where people do make comments, those comments have real world consequences. To the communities of Essex, which are at the forefront of our minds, to the officers and staff that have to police these operations. And they do sometimes give licence to those who would seek to cause harm, to commit crime, and to hurt the very communities that the police and Essex Police seek to protect. So please, if you need information about this operation, the policing operation, speak to Essex Police. We will be clear in our commitment to give information, whether it's to the local community, working with our strategic coordinating group, our group of local partners who are working together to make sure we understand and listen and can deal with any of the issues from local people and businesses, or to us directly in policing about the policing operation. So please, disinformation is not me seeking to limit people's views. It is making sure that those things that are said do not undermine the safety of the people who are lawfully and peacefully protesting, for the people of Epping, and indeed the officers and the staff that are there as part of this operation. So going forward, we know there are a couple of protests that are advertised. We have a robust, and I stress robust, policing operation in place. You will have seen the arrests we've made, you'll have seen the footage about the officers, and I want to make it really, really clear. If you come to protest peacefully and lawfully, then we will allow people to do that. It is their democratic right, it is their legal right. If you come here and commit crime, we will deal with that robustly. Working with our partners, we will gather the evidence and we will bring prosecutions, because that is in nobody's interest, for people to get hurt or to limit people's freedom of speech through violence. The operation is clear, you will see that through the coming weeks, and I'll ask people to respect that. So in summary, can I just say, it's about communities. It's about protecting communities, whoever they are. It's about operating within the law. It's about dealing with facts and making sure that Essex Police does the job it needs to do, which is to prevent crime, reduce crime. And I want to stress that every single officer that is on this protest that has to deal with the thugs and vandals is an officer that is not otherwise protecting a community from a sex crime or a burglary or antisocial behaviour. So please, 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 again, my appeal to the people of Essex and particularly Epping, and anyone who comes to protest, please think about that. Keep within the law, help us to do our job, and make sure everyone can express their rights, their views, safely and peacefully, because that's an important part of Essex Police. Thank you.
Tom Parmenter from Sky News. Do you accept that your officers have given a higher level of protection to one side of the demonstration? And do you also accept that in the accusation being made today that those officers' actions caused some of the violence?
No, I don't accept that. The only protection that officers are doing is to those lawful and law-abiding people, whether they're in that accommodation, whether they're the people of Epping, or whether they are people who are standing there, as I've seen and you've seen the footage, standing there, you know, with placards and banners wishing to make a very important and legitimate view, whichever your views about it. Where officers have intervened, that has because there has been disorder, there has been threats, or there has been the fear and concerns of those threats. And as I said at the beginning, that is exactly what policing will do, and we will step forward to do that. We are not being partial in any way, shape or form. If you're here to protest peacefully and lawfully, we will allow you. It's not us giving permission, it's you are exercising your legitimate rights. Where you break the law, that is where we'll intervene.
If you're not apologising, are you going to follow the demands of some politicians in this country who have called you to resign over this?
No, I'm not. I'm not going to do that. And this is not about me. This is about the communities of Essex. It's what I spoke about earlier. You know, the communities that are disrupted, the legitimate people who want to go and protest outside that hotel, and I make no observation about view of that. If they're peaceful and lawful, they want to express their views. That is their right, and it is important that within the laws of this country that Essex Police allow that to take place. I come back to the point where people break the law, where they smash up police vans, where they assault workers from the hotel, where they are chasing people away. Those are the people that we will not tolerate and we will deal with. And I think, and I hope you see from the 10 arrests we've made, that is exactly what we have done.
What are the consequences of those kind of calls in this kind of situation?
I don't understand the question.
What calls for you to resign over the actions of your officers?
The issue is not about my resignation. The issue is about an effective police operation that keeps the communities of Epping safe, the communities of Essex safe, allows people to go about their lawful rights and prevents and detects crime. That's what that issue is about.
Tom, I think, just give everyone a chance. I think can we go next? Thank you.
Why did your officers escort counter-protesters somewhere in masks towards what appeared to be a likely peaceful demonstration?
Well, officers, people have got the right to turn up and protest where they're peaceful and lawful, and that is exactly what they'll do. People made their own way to this location, and we saw that, and we've seen the footage, and I know my officers were there. They had committed no crimes at that stage, and of course officers properly were monitoring those groups to ensure that there was no confrontation and disorder. That's what they do. That's what you see at many protests and demonstrations, and that's exactly what they do. And I want to stress, where people have clearly committed offences, we have intervened and we've made arrests. And the record of the courts and the people charged is clarity of that.
But isn't that tactic risk a confrontation?
I'm not going. Every tactic and every intervention in a public order situation has pros and cons, has choices and consequences. I've got highly professional, highly trained and highly skilled commanders and officers on the ground. I'm not going to second guess their judgments. They are highly trained in doing that. They need to react to the situation that they face, and I am confident that from the arrest they've made, from the work that we've done, that they have done that in this occasion.
Chief Constable, hang on, can we take it one at a time? Just give the Chief a chance. I think there's one extra point there. In that I think there's a myth about police officers' roles with a van specifically, and I think, Chief, you should address that if you're happy to.
And I think that's a good prompt, Robin, so thank you. I mean, there's been some accusation in the media that we drove people to the protest. That is not true. We have not driven anybody to that protest. People made their own way there. And of course, one of the accusations and one of the things circulated is we did take people away for their safety, for the safety of everyone there, because it was the best operational thing to do to prevent violence, to diffuse the situation. We drove them away from a violent confrontation.
Chief Constable, what do you say?
Sorry, where are you from? Just give your name.
Sorry, Vinny O'Dowd, BBC.
Thanks, Vinny.
What do you say to a leader of a national party who's furthering misinformation about what happened last Thursday?
Well, I repeat my appeal. It's not for me to silence or to try and to say to people what they should or shouldn't say. My appeal to people, whether they're the leader of a national party or just somebody who's got a comment to make, is please consider the consequences in the real world of your actions. Is what you are saying going to cause violence or make it work for the people of Epping, for the officers, the staff members at the hotel, the residents, or indeed the local community? That's what you've got to think about. It's not for me to try and sanction or to limit what they say. Of course, where people break the law and that there is a clear breach of law, we will investigate those matters.
And what do you say to parents in Epping who are taking their children out of the town this coming weekend in anticipation of further violence?
Well, I mean, that's the point I want to make around this. Is about the people of Epping first and foremost.
What do you say to those parents?
Well, I say to those parents, we'll have a robust policing operation. Essex is safe. You will have hundreds of officers on duty. We are working with local communities, with our local community groups, with the local authority. We've got local officers who are deployed even now and this week working with parents, working with communities to make sure that people can feel assured. I want the people of Epping to understand that it is exactly that concern, that disruption, that fear that is at the heart of what we're trying to achieve. If you remember, that's where I started this press conference.
One at a time. Can we get to the gentleman in the red tie? Thank you.
Charlie Peters, GB News. Your colleague Stuart Hooper said, in terms of bringing people to the hotel, the police have a duty to facilitate free assembly. The force initially said that they didn't bring anyone to the hotel, but your colleague seems to suggest that that had happened after footage emerged. Can you set the record straight then? Was Stuart wrong when he said that?
Under the law of this country as it stands, people have the freedom to assembly and to freedom of speech.
So your officers did bring people towards that hotel?
Listen to my answer. That is there is a duty upon policing to allow people to exercise their rights of assembly and protest. That's a right of this country, under the Human Rights Act. People came to that of their own volition. They walked up to that protest in order to ensure that we understand the threat, manage and deal with the risks and the issues, as we did outside the hotel, as we did in the high street. We had officers there and they would have walked alongside to make sure that they understand, can intervene and prevent and detect crime. That's what happened, that's what the photos show, and that's what we did.
Was there no thought about keeping the groups further away from each other? It's well known that these groups will confront each other and generate that hostility, which then leads to sparks of violence that has played out. Is that a regret from your force that you didn't keep them further apart?
It's not for me to comment and to try and criticise or indeed to examine that operation. We made 10 arrests. We have managed to ensure that those who are, as I said at the beginning, lawful and legitimate were there peacefully protesting. And there were many of those, many more of those, and I want to stress that. They were able to do that, and that's our priority around making sure that they can do that. And where people stepped across that line, where they committed and broke the law, they were arrested, and the court records will show they have been charged and some remanded, and that's the position we take around that.
Charlie, thank you. Next, where are you from, please?
Theo Ashford, Times Radio.
Thank you.
Just in your comments about remarks, people acting responsibly, it sounds like a challenge in effect to Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, that he should perhaps reconsider any comments that he might make in future. Is that the correct understanding?
No, not at all. I am just saying, from a policing perspective, it is not for me to silence or to try and mute any legitimate voice, elected or otherwise, in that. That is not the policing space. As I started at the beginning, my job is to make sure people are safe, the communities of Epping are safe, to prevent and detect crime, and to keep the King's peace. All I'm asking is for responsible reporting, responsible commentary, so that we don't make that job more difficult, because that has real world consequences for the people of Epping, for the people in that hotel, for the communities that I am duty bound to serve, and of course importantly to the officers. And that's what I'm asking for. I'm not saying anyone shouldn't submit their views. It is not for me to do that. I'm just asking people to be considerate.
Do migrant hotels place a pressure? Because you talked about in your brief excerpt that you talked about the fact that your officers aren't able to deal with other crimes, they aren't able to deal with burglaries, to support the people of Epping and Essex in other ways. Are you concerned that migrant hotels are drawing this particular hotel is drawing your officers into a policing operation that is diminishing the force's ability to deal with other crimes in the county?
What is drawing officers away from other crimes in the county is the irresponsible behaviour and the criminal behaviour of a significant but relatively small minority of people who come here and have come to Epping to commit violence. That's what means we have to have hundreds of police officers there, not because a number of people, largely peaceful, come together to express their views.
Are you going to be drawing on forces, other forces over the next week or so to support Essex Police?
Yes, policing across the country works together as we did last summer, working together to make sure, because it's not just about the communities of Epping or Essex, it is about the communities of this country, and policing will, in a coordinated and joined up way, with the support of the government, make sure that we're able to go back to those points, protect communities, keep people safe, allow people to exercise those legitimate rights peacefully and lawfully. And of course, we work together.
How many extra officers? Last question.
I'm not going to get into the operational discussions around that. That's a matter of operational security.
There's some very patient colleagues here. Could I ask the gentleman in the front and then the lady behind? Thank you. And if you could identify yourself, thank you.
David Jackman from Everything Epping Forest. At the last two disturbances, protests, you introduced a dispersal order at 10:30 p.m. 45 minutes later on Sunday, you said, or issued a statement to say that all the crowds have dispersed. If they're such an effective deterrent, why weren't they introduced earlier in the evenings?
The operational command in instances rightly and properly with experienced, operationally qualified and competent commanders. It's not for me to go back and make decisions in hindsight from the information and the intelligence and the circumstances they faced. I've got every single confidence that I have given them the strategic steer. You've heard that from me today about what our role is. They're talking and listening to communities. They know their role. They've set a clear direction around preventing crime, protecting people, keeping the King's peace. They've got the skills, they've got the experience, and they've got the resources. And they will use every piece of legislation that is appropriate, lawful, and proportionate to deal with the issues that they face.
And just to follow up on that, there have been incidents in Epping Forest recently where there's been dispersal orders put in place for events like car meets. Well, they've been in place for 24 hours. Is that something you're looking to do for Epping?
I'm not going to comment on the tactics. The tactical commanders, the operational commanders will make those decisions. All I can do is reassure the people of Epping and indeed the whole of Essex that the commanders will use whatever lawful powers are available to achieve those aims, to keep people safe, to prevent and detect crime, and to importantly keep the peace, allowing those who wish to exercise and express their legitimate and lawful views peacefully.
One more to the lady behind from LBC,
Hi,
I think.
Shivani Sharma, LBC Radio. Beyond asking people to think twice about spreading misinformation, are you actually going to do anything to clamp down on political leaders or members of the public who are stoking tensions, some of them even inciting violence online?
Well, it's not the police's job to clamp down on elected politicians. You know, freedom of speech is important to a protester. It is to government and to any person who wants to have a view. All I'm asking is that people are responsible about what they say and they consider the real world consequences. Where people commit crime online, then we will apply the laws and look at those in the way that's appropriate to that. Where people have views that I or others may disagree with, I am just an appeal that people be responsible and consider what they say. If what they say now has an impact that means someone gets hurt on Thursday or on Saturday, then I would just ask, consider that, because those are the people that are at the centre of what we're concerned about, the people of Epping, whoever they are, whichever community they come from, and the officers that are having to police that operation, because that's what my concern is. That's the concern of the policing operation, doing that in accordance with the law.
Can we get to the gentleman from the BBC and then to the gentleman over there?
Yes,
Thank you.
Stuart Woodward, BBC Look East. Just coming back to the issue on the strain of resources across Essex, how concerned are you then about future protests potentially from this weekend And following on from that, comments from the leader of Epping Forest District Council saying that certain people are not welcome here, potentially bringing other people with them as well. How concerned are you that that sort of gathering could stretch you even further than this weekend? We heard in courts this week that you were overwhelmed and outnumbered.
I don't think we were overwhelmed and outnumbered, and certainly going forward we will not be overwhelmed and outnumbered. I want to reassure you, people of Epping and the people of Essex, that there are sufficient resources in the place to make sure that we can deal with any eventuality, supported by the rest of the country as required. I haven't seen those comments, so I'm not going to comment on those elements around it. However, what I would stress is we come back to that point is we are ready to deal with any eventuality. We will be here to enforce the law, to allow people to carry out their rights, whoever they are, as long as it takes. And I know, because I've discussed that with our Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, discussed it with the Police Minister, is that we will have the support of the government and indeed the rest of policing in order to do that, whether it's here or somewhere else in Essex. And I know that's the same for every Chief Constable in the country.
There's a gentleman over here in the dark jacket and then behind you.
Would the police have escorted anti-migrant protesters to the same location when you stand up to racism march?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Would the police have escorted anti-migrant protesters to the same location as the counter demonstration?
I've got to be really, really clear here. People have got the right to go to anywhere unless they're breaking the law or there's some kind of prevention in place. If you look at what happened here, we had a number of people who were coming to express their lawful rights around an issue of concern which we've been talking about. So policing went alongside those people to make sure there was no disorder, no crime committed, and make sure we understand that. As I have said repeatedly, the moment the law is broken, or there is disorder or threats of disorder, that is when policing has intervened, and that is when we would intervene. There is no issue about us allowing or not allowing people to place unless there's some kind of restriction in place.
Thank you. And the gentleman behind the white shirt.
Thank you. Have you spoken to colleagues in any other forces across the country about the housing of asylum seekers in hotels and whether that's a flashpoint and how to deal with it? And do you think as long as asylum seekers are housed in hotels in Essex or elsewhere, there could be unrest?
I'm here to talk about Epping. I'm here to talk about the policing operation in Essex, okay, and also, by virtue of my national role, to make sure that people are reassured that policing is talking and looking at this collectively over. The issue is here in Epping and here in Essex. So I want to reassure people that we have got the right operation in place. We are making sure that people, as I've repeatedly said, can exercise their lawful rights peacefully, and that we've got the appropriate tactics, response and plans in place to deal with it where they don't. The issue of whether or what the consequences of the asylum hotels or asylum policy is not one for policing, that is one for government, and I know they're treating that seriously.
With your NPCC hat on, you address that point?
Well, the same point is that I know my colleagues across the country have been working with partners, working with the Home Office around the issues and the circumstances concerning people being housed in asylum hotels and people being housed across the country. They have been doing that as we have it, and largely and overwhelmingly, and I can talk for Essex, that has been peaceful. Of course there have been issues and incidents. I go back to the incident and issue and the alleged crime that started this. Where that happens, policing has and does intervene to make arrests. And I go back to the alleged crime, the person who's been arrested and charged in relation to the alleged sexual assault. I know that our colleagues across the country are doing that, and where crimes have been committed in relation, it's like any other person in the community. We gather the evidence, we make arrests where that's appropriate, we consult with the Crown Prosecution, and we bring prosecutions where that's right. That's what we've done in this case. That's what we'll do. The issue of whether they should or shouldn't be there is not a matter for policing.
Chief, thank you. There's a lady on the
Hi,
left
Lottie O'Brien, Daily Express. Do you know when or if the migrants will be actually moved out of the Bell Hotel?
The answer is no, but equally, that is not a matter for policing in relation to that matter. My concern is that they are there, they're there lawfully. It's for us to make sure that all the community, whoever they are with them, occupants of that hotel, those people who work there, and let's not forget there was 2 people who worked there who were seriously assaulted a couple of weeks ago in relation to this matter. People who are going to do a day's work, members of communities. So no, I don't know the answer, and even if I did, that is an issue for government and others. It's not an issue for policing.
So are you expecting protests to just go on for the foreseeable this summer?
I'm expecting that, because I am ever the optimist, that there will continue to be a number of lawful and peaceful people who will come and express their views. I'm expecting, as you know, there's a vote in the council, that the democratic process will take its place, and those who are responsible for this will make decisions in relation to those matters and address those issues. Policing will make sure people, as best we can, can go about their business lawfully and safely, and whilst they're doing so, keep the King's peace. So that the businesses of Epping, so that the people who go there, the school kids, I know school's out, but young people, the parents that have been referred to here, feel safe and are safe in Epping and across Essex.
Thank you. We'll just go with the ones that are remaining with hands up, if that's okay. The gentleman first in the
yeah, it's Andrew Young here from East Anglia News Service. Can you comment on these people who are live streaming, so-called citizen journalists, live recording events and showing the protesters? To how much of an extent have you been using evidence from their videos to identify people causing disorder, and has that resulted in any people being arrested?
Well, I'm not going to talk specifically about ongoing investigations. I've told you about the number that have been arrested, nor would I set out about how we might be using that in evidence. That's a matter of operational sensitivity. What I would say is we're aware of those live streamers. They have as much right to do that as you do to report in the interest, that citizen journalism. Right. My appeal goes to them as well.
But you're monitoring their output?
We are looking at all of the output and all of the information that's available to us, so that we've got the fullest picture to understand the issues, to understand community concerns. As we're talking to local communities, we're looking at what's on social media in the open arena, so that we understand those issues, we can identify threat, and of course, where we identify an issue, where that gives us information about a crime being committed, or threat, or harm, or a risk, then operational commanders will use that information to inform their decision.
But in relation to after the event, are you going back and looking at those feeds to see if you can identify offenders and bring them to justice?
Where people commit crimes, we will use every piece of information and evidence that is lawfully available to us to make sure we achieve our aim, which is to bring people to justice who have caused harm to communities.
Thank you. Thank you. Who is next? Yes, over to you.
Nicole from Cambridge Independent. We've already seen social media chat and even protests in London directly linked to this, with rumours that asylum seekers had been moved into London. How are you and other forces working together to make sure you're not simply moving the problem around and you are tackling what's actually going on?
Well, police is quite sophisticated, both in terms of the intelligence and the public order response. We learnt lots. We had a fantastic response last summer in terms of Nivette. Over 6,500 officers mobilised, and you've seen the hundreds and hundreds of arrests that were made there. The intelligence they're learning from His Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary learning has all been incorporated. We have national coordination, which allows us to share information, to make sure we're aware of what's going on, and ultimately, and basically, we talk to each other, because the mission about here in Epping is the same as the mission for policing: to keep people safe, to protect communities, and to make sure we prevent crime and deal with it, and of course keep the King's peace. So we're talking throughout. There's a national coordination structure in place, because it would be remiss of us not to. However, the issue today is about Epping. The issue we know about is Epping and the violence we've seen in the recent times of Epping, and that's what I'm here to talk to you today.
Thank you. There's a gentleman over there, and that may be the last one, please, for now. Thank you.
Edgar from Channel 4 News. In your statement, you mentioned some people who have come to Epping and committed harm. To what extent was this a community organised protest, and what do you make of the suggestion that Stand Up to Racism put out today that the sort of neo-Nazi group, illustrated neo-Nazi group, Homeland, was one of the primary sort of organisers of the demonstration?
Well, I've got no information available to me to say that any particular group or person is behind organising this information. Clearly, where there are, we will examine that and identify that and see what offences they commit, whether they should have notified us about a march or a procession around those issues. What we have, and if you look at the commentary from Essex Police, we have got those who are protesting against the location of this hotel, the use of this hotel in Essex, and we've got those who are pro that, who are coming out to counter that protest, and that's the language we've used. We've also got, and I've described that there is different factions within that, those who have been peaceful, legitimate, and thank you again to those people. But you've also had a number of people who have either come with that intention, or once something has happened, have taken that intention to cause violence. So whether it's about those who are pro and anti that particular issue, that's who we've seen. We will, of course, look to see if there's any link, if there are organisers behind this, if there are people seeking to incite and commit criminal offences by inciting violence, or indeed stoking up organisers. We will, of course, consider that, gather the evidence, and take the appropriate action.
In your statement, you said people coming in to Epping. Is that based on suggestion that actually this is not the community sort of response that it may have initially been?
There have been a huge different number of people. There have been a large proportion of people are Essex residents. We've seen that from the commentary, you see that from the media, local media reports, and again from the officers reporting on the ground. There have as well been other people who have come in from elsewhere to express their views. And again, where people are acting lawfully, acting peacefully, that is their right to do that. And it is our, lawfully we need to ensure they can do that in the same way as people need to go to the shops or take their kids from school or indeed go in and out of that hotel providing they're not committing crime. So that's the position.